Thank you for
You.
being here.
Glad to be
Yeah,
here.
so we're going to talk about your book, Heart of Transformation. And
Okay.
that's something really close to my heart because I think I've had three in my corporate world. So it's pretty cool that you're writing about it. So my first question, I guess, is why did you write about the Heart of Transformation?
Well, Ren, I've been working in the space of change and transformation, culture and organization development for, longer than I'd care to admit. But I always struggled. And as I moved through this space, I found all sorts of, clear linear models about how we do it, but yet it didn't seem to really have the impact people were looking for. And when I was working at Gartner, I was working with a lot of chief information officers, chief digital officers who were, asked to drive transformation driven by everything that was happening in digital. And they'd come around to the fact they'd say, Michael, it's actually not the technology that's difficult. We can figure that out. He said, but getting the organization, the people to kind of move along with us, that's where the real challenge is. And so for me, people are at the heart of transformation, but you can't change people. You can't manage people like a machine or a tool. You have to engage people, and change is something that really happens, as I've discovered over the years, individually. It's an individual game played in groups. You can't just start with some big systemic project. You have to start smaller. You have to start with leadership. And so for me, that's what really is at the heart of transformation. And I was having the great opportunity to work with and advise my clients and some great organizations on that, but it was kind of a limited ability to impact the world. And I thought maybe I should take this, put it down, and see if it can be useful in a broader arena than those that I get to, touch in my day-to-day work. And so that's what prompted me to write it.
Amazing. I'm actually thinking about one of my clients. So he's an executive leader and they're
Mhm.
now undergoing a massive transformation. And in our coaching session, he's always concerned on the impact to his team. And you're so right. He's having some, employees having some anxiety on the changes. That would be a great book for him and his team.
Well,
Totally.
that's the kind I would think it would hope it would be, Ren, because, for me, and maybe we'll get to this, but I'll just kind of start with it. The book itself, the core of it, the ideas like around, valuing exploration before execution, or humanizing before organizing, learning before knowing, changing before protecting. These things are not brand new concepts by any means. They're not things I've invented by no way, shape, or form. But what I've tried to do is take these concepts that we've talked about and even in many ways accepted as very positive and very good, but we don't know how to do it. I was talking to someone recently and was relating a story about the first and unfortunately only time I went scuba diving, and I'm going to have to try it again. But I was so turned off by it because I went to this little resort in Turks and Caicos. It's the first time I'd ever
Mm.
done anything like that with my wife. Our kids were little, and we got away and we go out and we went through the class and learned everything. And then we got in the water and you're supposed to go down and find kind of that spot to float. And I just kept adjusting and going up and down. I was having a real hard time staying level. Finally, I get the thumbs up from the instructor and we go up top of the water and I pop out and I'm about to ask her for help. And she goes, "You have to stay level." And I said, I know I'm trying to, but I'm not. What do I do? She goes, "Just stay level." And I thought, well, that's the worst advice I've ever had in my world, in my life, because if I knew how to stay level, I would be level. But it seemed to me that was the advice that I was getting and that we were giving people in change, just change the culture, just overcome resistance, all these terms, but nobody could talk about actually how do you
How?
do that? And there was programs and models, but still it didn't seem to impact people. And so for me, I started looking at, well, what actually changes your beliefs? It's if you try on behaviors that show you a different way of thinking. And the easiest behaviors I could think of were questions. And so really the core of the book is, what are the questions that have asked of yourself and of others, answered, and then kind of examined, will lead you to actually maybe question the assumptions and beliefs that you have that will lead to actual change.
Great. I know. Just do it. How? I think also one of the things that incorporate, especially on probably the middle management, especially if it's like a global company from the middle management down, it's not very clear the why behind the
Mhm.
transformation. Um, and I think the leaders try to explain the why, but it never really, like, people don't understand. And so it's harder to follow the structure or the transformation itself. So what do
Yeah.
you think are, what can we do better as leaders?
But it's a great question. I think one of the first things we have to realize is that our why, the things that really matter to us, maybe don't matter at all to somebody else. And I've had executives say that we see that the change the future is bringing. We see the challenge of technology. We know that we must change this organization, and they see all these things, but yet their motivation is very different. They're making maybe a lot in stock options or value in the company, but their why is to create this company for the future. Most employees aren't thinking that far into the future. Unfortunately, they're still thinking
Mm,
about today and tomorrow. And their why is, how do I keep my skills relevant? How do I keep my job? How do I keep my status? How do I take care of my family? And so we start talking about these big dreams, which are great, but we also don't bring it down to, but how does this impact me today? What will this big dream of yours do to my life? And so that's why I say change is kind of an individual game played in groups, is that we have to get people to talk through the change. We also have to get people to talk through, how does our little group or area get towards that future, because we're not breaking it down for people. We're making it big
s-
and long and large and out there, and it's so far away. But people need to think about, what's my next step? What's my first step today? So we don't quite know how to make that picture or that vision or that dream a reality, and to resonate with people at whatever level they're at in the organization. Especially as you go down farther in the organizational hierarchy, they get more and more divorced from what it is we're trying to do.
Great. I'm so grateful that I have this on recording because I couldn't follow up with all of the notes, and because these are really practical. You're right. Like, break it down into pieces where people can resonate. And because I still don't have a copy of your book and I'm waiting for it, is there something? And I think this actually really aligns with Ron Carucci's book as well, because I was reading Ron's book, and at the end of the chapter, he actually has some exercise on how to be honest, like really asking ourselves first, and then and if we're a leader, some exercises we can do with our team. Is there something similar in your book that as a group context the leaders can work on?
Yeah, there absolutely is. And yeah, and Ron's a great guy. I think it's how we kind of all connected. It was through Dory Clark's Recognized
Yeah.
Expert Group. Ron's a member of You Are, I Am, a great little community that she's organized. And what I love about Ron's work as well is it is very pragmatic and accessible like that. And yes, that is what I've tried to do. So there's a couple of things in the book and then beyond. One is, there are all the kind of questions that you can use. I think there's 30, actually 31. There's a bonus question in one of the 6 chapters that has the questions. And there's the questions you can use, but there's also, how do you ask those questions? So I have a formula for that in the book. I kind of call it, assess, ask, answer, and then kind of, sorry, it's assume, ask again, and assess. And you can find these four
Awesome.
A's in the book. But what I've done is I've also created a canvas for those. And so on my website, you can download the canvas that actually helps you answer the questions or ask the questions better. And we've created tools like that. And there's a number of different tools in the book. So what I try and do is have every chapter really have something that you can practically do. What I would love is that people don't just kind of read it through, but as they read, they say, I'm going to try this one thing. And I'm going to try that one thing. In fact, I start the book honestly by telling a story about how I learned to swim as an adult. And you can read the book to get the whole story, but the bottom line is I went through a program that teaches you over 2 days, like 32 or 40 different parts of swimming, and they coach you through it intensively over 2 days. And when I did it, it transformed my swimming in 2 days. Unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. But when I walked away, they said, hey, here's the thing. Now, when you leave here, don't try and do all of these things at once. Just go out and swim, but pick
Mhm.
one to focus on. And the next time, pick a different one. So I say the same thing to leaders and managers. Don't try and do this all at once. Pick one of these questions and work it into the work that you're doing as you're trying to manage and lead and drive change. And then pick a different one, pick a different approach, because it builds over time as you become more comfortable and more fluent with it. And all of a sudden you'll find that actually your change skills are really good, really solid, have depth and breadth you didn't imagine because you started bit by bit. You didn't have to worry about changing it all at once. So there absolutely are. And we're creating more tools every day and putting them on the website for download as well.
That's great. I'm excited. I can share some with my clients because I think there's not a lot of these conversations happening, and you're right. Like how do I bring it forward with my team? And the impact is not necessarily, it can't be seen. Like it's just under the layer, and people are afraid to talk about it unless the leader just kind of come out and, hey, let's talk about this. Let's build a muscle talking about it. That's awesome. I look forward to that. So as I've said, I think I've had 3 transformation in my corporate life. There's an agile. There's the latest one when I left my last company. It was a digital transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about digital transformation, and how do we? Because at the end of the day, as the employee still get scared, right? Oh, there's a digital transformation. In their head, they're always like, okay, am I going to be changed with a bot? Will an AI, get my job?
Digital transformation. I mean, that's most of the transformation I did was in that space, because I, again, was working with a lot of technology leaders when I was at Gartner, and then working with digital transformation at GE. And what's interesting about what digital has done is it has forced our hand around change and transformation, and it's made more obvious the risks you take by just staying static, because there's so many companies that have been disrupted and upended by the used to be digital upstarts that are now the digital giants in the world, and more that come along every day. And people do have these concerns about, well, is the job I'm doing today going to go away? And the answer in some cases is yes. But that's not a bad thing unless we let it be, because most of the time technological innovation, be it digital or even just industrial technologies, have done away with old jobs and created new jobs that are actually better jobs. And so if I think of one of the areas that I've worked in my career, which is in human resources, human resources really started to gain a foothold as a discipline in organizations when there were more laws and policies and things that required us to have an HR department to mitigate the risk of not doing things right, running afoul of labor laws and laws to protect people. But much of the transactional work that HR has done traditionally is going away. I mean, why should you have people, manning your, benefits hotline when another company can do it? And when that company can use, chatbots and AI to give them all the answers they need, can anticipate those transactional questions. But that means then that the people in HR can stop doing some of that stuff that's really just sort of rote and passing on information or looking things up, and they can start to really help understand, well, what are the problems you're trying to solve? What kind of benefits do you need most? What do we need to do as far as how we treat people to engage them? And we're seeing that right now in a post-COVID world. It is staggering the amount of people who are considering changing jobs. I read one statistic that said, one assessment, one piece of research said that 95% of people post-COVID were thinking about, should they make a change in their job, to, I'm going to change my job. That's massive, but it's because they've started to see there's other opportunities out there. And the people who can say, oh, well, what is it that you're looking for in a job besides what I've given you in the past, which is just money, and maybe some free snacks? What is it you really want? They want more flexibility. They want to be seen as an individual and treated that way, not just, put into a mold. And so there's a lot of creative, innovative thought work that HR people can do if they step into that, but it's harder work. It is more creative work. And so they have to step up and rise up to that. And sometimes, we don't always want that level of work. Doing the older job is easy, but those older jobs, those more transactional jobs, yeah, they're going to go away one way or the other, but that's inevitable. There's just nothing we can do about it. It happened to the buggy whip manufacturers. When we stop making
Yep.
buggies, it'll happen to anybody.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thinking that I would encourage people to do. Like, even if their companies are not into a transformation, like in a personal one, I think that's one of the things that they can get from your book. Like, how do I transform myself into this new things that's happening? I mean, I've always been in sales for a long time, and for me, I was thinking, okay, if there's AI now, I can actually use real data and real numbers to predict how my customers would want to work with me, and really upskill myself, to that level rather than worrying about, oh my God, they're gonna replace me, right? So that's the
Yeah.
kind of it's a mindset shift as well. So if
Well, actually, if I could say, Rand, I think you
yes,
bring up a
please.
really good point in that there's two ways to look at, technology or digital changing the nature of jobs. One is it's a threat, and one is it's an opportunity, right? And I had the great good fortune to spend some time a couple of years ago or so before he passed away. Spend an afternoon with the late Clay Christensen, who wrote The Innovator's
Mhm.
Dilemma, and we were talking, and he had this moment when he said, and I've written about this online, but he said, Michael, I'm having a bit of an epiphany here. It used to be that we had to develop the skills and abilities to earn the job. Now we've earned the job, but we need to develop the skills and abilities to do what comes next in that job. And unfortunately, the majority of people, especially if it's a very senior job, oftentimes look at that as a threat. It's like, wait a minute, you mean I'm no longer sufficient to this job? I better fight that truth because I got to hang on to it because it's what gives me the status and the wealth and the respect that I have. And then there's a smaller amount that say, okay, so I'm here, but I need to learn how to do this job. That's great because I'm probably best placed to do that because I've done all the things to get here. Now I have to learn what's next, and it's an opportunity. And that can happen at any job that you're at, but
Mm.
we do have to think of it as an opportunity to continue to learn and grow. And it's one of the reasons that in the book I champion, learning before knowing, because you can't know enough anymore. You can't know enough about any job because they're all getting more complex. There's more information, it's changing faster. And so we have to be learners and not knowers. But that's an uncomfortable place if we get our
Yes.
value from what we know.
Yeah, exactly. I think I maybe in the last conversation we had, that was a strong point that you said. A lot of leaders just, well, yeah, just doesn't want to try it first and then, see for themselves how does this work before, which really resonated with me because I just interviewed my ex-CEO of Ruckus, Selena Lowe, amazing leader. And one of the things that I asked her was, what made, Ruckus really like a cool culture to work with. And she said several stuff, but what I said was, you know what, for me, because all of the leaders, fold their, how do you call this, fold their shirts and
Yeah.
do the job, do the work,
Yeah.
like the
Roll up their
chief.
sleeves. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. Like, do it first as a leader and feel how it works, right?
Yeah, I
That's
think
yeah.
so. And I think those skills like, willing, I mean, when it comes to change, change makes you vulnerable. Change means you're going to do things you don't know how to do. For example, here's something I want to change in my life. I have always loved music. I listen to music all the time. And when I was a child, I played the piano for about 5 years and I loved it. But my mother and I and the piano teacher kind of argued over how the practicing should be done and what's the right way to do it. And at one point, we decided that's it. I'm done. I'm not going to do it anymore. And later on in her life, my mother, said, I really regret that I pushed on that. But I
Mm,
thought about it and I thought, you know what? Okay, now and I'm 55 years old. I thought, you know what? I'm going to learn to play the piano again. So I got myself a keyboard, and every Tuesday night, I get online with the wonderful Cosmo Buono out of New York. I'm here in the West Coast, and I do my piano
awesome.
lesson. And right now, I'm playing little scales and songs like Lullaby and Ode to Joy, and I'm making mistakes and I'm screwing up, and it's humbling. But it's
Mm,
good to be grounded in that humility of knowing I don't know how to do this, but yet every time I make a mistake, that's a mistake that I learn from. And I may make it again, but eventually I stop making that one and I get better and better. And so it's regrounding me in learning. And I think that there's a lot of people, especially, and I hope this comes across the right way, especially people, maybe like myself, who have worked at very senior levels in organizations, who have had big jobs, had hundreds of people in their department, had tens of millions of dollars in their budget, speak in front of thousands of people, whatever it may be. There's still something that we're not good at. There's lots of things. There's still things we have to learn. And I think that everybody needs to be able to embrace that childlike learning part of themselves, and
Mm.
actually, in order to be a real adult. And so for leaders, when it comes to things that we're going through and changes in an organization, they need to go first. They need to show people, I'm learning. I don't exactly know what I'm doing here, and that's okay, because until they say that, which feels vulnerable, no one else out there is going to feel like they can openly learn. Everyone's going to feel like, no, we got to protect ourselves and pretend like we know everything, so we're invulnerable. But we're not, and we need to get past that illusion of invulnerability, and the fact that we don't require help. Especially in the West, we have this thing that, I mean, if you fall down in the street and you're bleeding, someone goes to help you up, you go, I'm sorry. Why would you say I'm sorry? You're bleeding in the street. But we
I know.
apologize for needing help. It's something we have to get over if we're going to move forward and change and transform.
That's amazing. Yeah, totally resonate. Don't worry, it's not only in your place. I think even in New Zealand, you fall and you're like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right? So it is. Okay, so if someone is reading your book and it's a lot of information,
Mhm.
if there is one thing that you want people to really remember, resonate, learn, and work in their life or in their career or in their professional job, what is it that you want to leave with them in your book?
Mm. I guess the thing I'd want is, it starts with you, whoever you are, whether you're a leader or the lead in an organization. It starts with you. You have to change yourself first. You have to build that heart of transformation of your, if you will, within yourself first. And so that means that you need to look at your assumptions, see what they are, question them, try some things that you normally wouldn't try. And for me in the book, I try and give people questions that may be unusual, questions that they've not asked before, is the ones to ask to be that new behavior. But you start with yourself. And I think that feels, especially to leaders, that feels counterproductive. They're like, no, 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 Michael, you don't understand. I have to change all of them, but all of them aren't going to change unless I lead the way, not by cracking the whip, but by standing out front and doing it first. And that's kind of the new role of leadership in the world we have now, is to, and we've said it before, but to lead by example, but by actually doing it, putting yourselves out there, being more vulnerable, being more open, being more curious, whatever it takes, being more or human, and kind of leading with the heart. And it sounds so soft and fuzzy and, esoteric, but yet the research is also really, really clear. People who lead with more heart and humanity get the kind of following and are able to help other people change, and their organizations just do much better, bottom line, success wise.
Totally. You gave me so much goosebumps. Totally resonate with you. People need to feel safe. And as a leader, I think you're right, self-awareness. Thank you so much, Michael. Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, it was just great to have the conversation with you, because I'm guessing it's now what, Wednesday morning there in New Zealand, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah,
So
totally.
yeah, you're yesterday, but my today right now is the
Yep.
first day the book comes out. Had a great
Also,
moment a minute ago though. I went,
congratulations.
thank you. I went online to Amazon here, and it said there was only 2 copies left, more coming soon. And so
Wow.
I thought that's great to see, because for me, I guess a book could be a vanity project. I guess a book can be something that, gets me more business or helps me market. And,
Yep.
and, and all those things are wonderful. But I really wrote the book because I really believe that what's in there can help people. I've seen it help people that I worked with directly, and I really would like to share that and get that impact. And also, I would love to learn what in the book is not quite right or what in the book starts to become wrong over time so I can learn. So one of the only ways I can learn is to put this message out into the world and see what people give back. And I'm sure that there are things in there. I've already found some that are imperfect and need to evolve and
Mm.
grow. And so it's kind of cool that I get to help others learn at the same time I get to learn from doing that. It's a virtuous cycle that really makes me happy. So I'm thrilled to be on your show, thrilled to be with your audience, which I'm sure is around the world, but especially down in the New Zealand and Australia area. It's great to be with you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, the interesting part is, and it's not just because we went so digital last year with the pandemic. In the technology world that I grew up with, it's just really small. So I've been with Alcatel-Lucent, and it's just a global digital world. So for sure, when I post this, they're gonna catch it, and I'm really keen to use a lot of your worksheets or any exercise that I can help with the leaders. That would be really, really amazing. Thank you so much, Michael. You're so kind to give me time,
It's
and
my pleasure.
your work is so impressive. Have so much admiration for you and the rest of the Rex group. So I'm learning so much. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very generous. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ren.
Thank you. Have a great day,
Okay.
Michael. Thank you so
Bye bye.
much. Bye.